Mic check. All right, awesome. Good morning, everybody. I was betting with Christian if we could fill up the room.
I was going to say standing room only, and so if you want to help me win the bet, everybody can stand up, and then I would win the bet, and that would be a great way to start off the presentation.
Super excited to be here today. My name's Adel. I lead product management for our enterprise software at NVIDIA. I'm here with Christian.
I'm Christian. I'm a principal PM on the AI platform engineering group. I've been working with Adel and team for a while here.
A couple years now. And I got to be honest with you guys, this slide is not complete. It's actually inaccurate. Christian and I get to represent the body of work of many folks across our different organizations. In fact, many of them are sitting in this room here. So before we kick it off, I just want to thank you guys for this awesome collaboration. Speaking of collaboration, we are building on what, a decade-long partnership? A couple years between us.
Yeah, it's been a while. A couple years between these core teams, but it's been a long time enterprise to enterprise.
Yeah, I think Satya showed an executive summary of this slide yesterday. And it really goes to demonstrate just across how we're collaborating across the entire stack, right? I recall back in 2016 when we launched the Kepler GPUs, right? We published the very first VMI on the Azure Marketplace back then. And since then, this is just an incredible body of work across our two companies. We're talking about making sure we have the latest infrastructure, confidential computing, bringing all of our APIs onto our platform, our DGX cloud, going all the way to Windows. I mean, there's just a lot, right? There's a lot. What's your favorite across these?
It's tough to choose. I think for me, some of the most impactful work that we've done, I really like the Triton inference server that we brought as sort of a first-party type of native one-click deploy solution within Azure Machine Learning for managed online endpoints. I really like that work that we did. It came from a lot of customer demand. We heard a lot of this. We want to use Triton. We want to use an Azure ML. And so we said, OK, so how can we make this happen? How can we sort of build that better together story with one another here?
I'm going to one-up you.
OK.
Everything we do is for our customers, right? So the favorite is just realizing the benefits our customers win. You see SAP on here, you see Amdocs, or just representations of examples that are benefiting from this collaboration across the work.
Absolutely.
So this kind of represents the last couple of years of my life, hopefully everybody's lives, right? In 2022, when ChatGPT was launched, it was when my parents finally understood what it is that I do. Because they'd been hearing about deep learning for a long time. They're like, that cats and dogs and image classification doesn't make sense. But when my father started engaging with large language models and realizing he could summarize all these contracts, they finally understood what I do for work. So it was great, right? It awoke the world to the power of deep learning and transformer models. 2023, my kids thought I was a vet, right? Because they heard me talk about llamas all day long. They heard me talk about falcons all day long. I think we had a black mamba at one point too, right? But it was awesome because you had the Microsofts of the world, the Metas of the world, the NVIDIAs of the world, the Mistral AIs of the world, all releasing community models, right, for LLMs and Gen AI. And so there was a lot of experimentation happening. And 2024 is all about taking that experimentation and deploying it into production. And a lot of the conversations I'm engaged with now are about, we have this budget aside, these are our use cases, these are the KPIs we're trying to hit, help us go into production, right? And hopefully today, we'll show you guys how we're making that seamless. But before we do that, it's very important to demonstrate how we're dogfooding, right, ourselves. These are just a couple of examples that I took of how NVIDIA is utilizing Gen AI internally. On the left-hand side, it's the ability to conversate with our logs, right? So I picked a couple of use cases from our IT department because I think everybody here has got an IT department. So on the left-hand side, it's literally conversating with logs saying, hey, how many power distribution units do we have in inventory? It comes back and tells you, hey, you have 120, 115 are deployed, 5 are defective, and you got 2 on the way. On the right-hand side is my favorite IT tool. It's whenever my machine crashes, which is often. I just take a screenshot of the error that I have, I upload it, and it gives me back some recommendations, right? Like, Adel, did you check your internet connection by any chance, right? As an example. So just a couple of examples of how we're using Gen AI internally. There are a couple considerations that we all have to make as we're deploying Gen AI and LLMs internally. One is and they're not mutually exclusive, and it's not to say one is better than the other, but there are compromises you make when you choose one option versus the other, right? It's like comparing a full car to an engine. On the one hand, you've got an endpoint, an API that can just hit. And most enterprises that we're engaged with, that's how they get started with Gen AI, right? ChatGPT enabled a lot of that. They call it an API. It's the fastest way to get started and to feel the benefits of AI. There are some compromises you're making. You have no control over the infrastructure. You don't know where your prompts are going, right? It could be that your prompts are shared externally. And right, it's just those limitations. But again, it's the easiest path to get started. On the other side is a more do-it-yourself approach, right? So you get the engine, but you got to build the chassis, you got to build the car, et cetera. The benefits there are you've got more control, right? You can manage it, you can deploy in your VPC, et cetera. But then you need a lot of know-how, expertise to manage the infrastructure, any custom code you might require for your given model to keep it in check, and just the ongoing maintenance. Again, not mutually exclusive, and in a given workflow, we see enterprise utilizing a bit of both, but I think you just need to be conscious of these different compromises. Okay, so this is going to formulate the agenda that we're going to go through. As I said earlier, I'm responsible for NVIDIA AI Enterprise. And NVIDIA Enterprise is essentially a suite of software and microservices that we make available to the market. And the tagline is designed for businesses that are betting their business, right, on AI. And nowadays, everybody's on the AI bandwagon. So it's relevant to everybody. The first thing we're going to talk about is Gen AI runtime. And what that really means is full stack acceleration. Everybody knows us for our GPUs, right? But we have tons and tons of software engineers working to optimize community models on a daily basis. So we're going to talk about Nims. The second piece we're going to talk about is making that software enterprise grade, right? Because this is the year we're deploying into production. What does it mean to take software in an enterprise, knowing that a lot of that software comes from the open source community? And finally, instead of showing you slides, we're going to go to demos. Just show you, right? We're going to meet you where you are, Mr. Customers. On your favorite Azure service, on-prem, on a PC, we're going to show you guys how all this comes together. We are sleep deprived. All of our demos are live on a fickle Wi-Fi. What could go wrong? I don't know, but let's see.
It'll be interesting.
It will be fun.
One way or another.
It'll be fun. Anybody heard of Nims? Right? Jensen announced this. I love how the NVIDIAns put up their hands. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So Jensen announced this at GTC, almost a couple of months ago. If I were to explain Nims to a layman person, Nims stands for NVIDIA Inference Microservice. It's an opinionated way of doing inferencing for Gen AI as efficiently as possible. Right? It's an opinionated way of doing Gen AI inferencing as efficiently and as performant as possible. At the heart of it is a model, right? We containerize the microservice to make it super easy for you to deploy. We have an API layer that abides by the open API specs, and where there is a standard that exists, such as OpenAI, right, for LLMs, we abide by that standard. And they support different models, different domains, which we'll get to. And as I said earlier, there's an engine at the heart of it, a model. They're model specific. Because they're containerized, because they're secure, they're portable, right? And that's fundamentally the reason we're able to drive a lot of that collaboration across our companies. We secure that software and make it portable. We make it super easy to use. Our tagline is to be able to go from 0 to inference in 5 minutes. And we have day 0 support for our models. What does that mean? You saw Satya yesterday announce Phi-3 Vision, right, an extension to the Phi models. We've already Nimified the Phi models, right, from the get-go, from day 1. So we work with all the model creators to make sure on day 1 or day 0, you have support for Nims in our models. Finally I want to highlight just the improved TCO part of it, right? Because what you get with NIM on day 0 or day 1 is different in terms of performance, in terms of what you get a month later. Because this is something we're going to talk to. Just through software optimizations alone, you will see performance gains against the same hardware. And finally, it's enterprise grade, which is part of the value prop. Nims, when they GA, right? We're not in GA yet. We're in direct access. But when they GA, will automatically appear on the Azure Marketplace and in other cloud services across Azure. So stay tuned for that. But I want to talk real quick about the benefits of full stack acceleration, which is what really NIM looks to deliver, right? This is a bit of an older slide. It's Llama 2. Obviously, we've got Llama 3 out now. But this shows of the performance gains you get just through software optimizations alone. So you got an A100, that's the baseline performance. Running that same model without the software optimizations or NIMs, right, gives you a 2 to 3x performance advantage. But then when you start bringing in the optimizations that we drive across the models, you see that 5x improvement, right? You see that 5x improvement. And on the TCO side, right, you see a drastic reduction in TCO for running Llama 2, right? And we're talking about 3x the magnitude. So this is just the value of full stack acceleration outside of just running the model on a GPU. This is my favorite slide because it shows the community engagement that we have and the breadth of the models that we have to offer, right? Yes, we will publish, NVIDIA will publish a few models, but we're all about accelerating the community's models, right? The Metas, the Microsofts, the Mistrals, right, the Googles of the world. And so, like I said, day zero support for these models, and they will run on your favorite Azure service. Okay, enterprise grade. Spend a little bit on this, what it takes to make our microservices and our software, our containers, and our SDKs enterprise grade. I find myself in a lot of discussions with compliance nowadays, right? But you can pass these on to your IT. They can rest assured we've got you guys covered. But really, why is this increasingly important now, right? The number of GitHub projects for Gen AI like tripled or quadrupled in the last couple of years. With that, though, came a lot more in terms of potential vulnerabilities in giving software. So that's why you see nearly a 50% growth in the amount of critical and high vulnerabilities across these softwares. And of course, going from a pilot, a POC, to deployment in production, frankly, the timelines are shrinking, right? Because the market is accelerating a lot faster, as timelines are shrinking. Now it takes at least a month, if not more, to go from one to the next. But don't worry, we got you guys covered. So part of the value that you get through NVIDIA Enterprise for Nims and all other SDKs is you get access to different branches. You want access to the latest features. You want access to the Phi 3 vision model that you want to run in on-prem or in your favorite Azure service. We have that available. But in addition to our feature branch, we have something called production branches as well. And frankly, this is what's enabled us to integrate Triton as an inferencing server in Azure's managed endpoints. What are the differences between the two? The production branches looks to bring stability to your IT departments and security. So the guarantees that we make is for 9 months, we will not change any of the underlying libraries or APIs that you're interacting with. And throughout that time, we're going to patch all critical and high vulnerabilities so that your system admins just get to inherit that goodness, right? And we provide a software bill of materials. We provide a vulnerability and exchange, what we call a VEX, which is how you communicate a given CVE status. And the idea is that you have predictability in terms of what your API is going to be. They're not going to change, right? They're not going to change. And then in between branches, we give you guys 3 months to consume the next branch, because you can bet in a fast-moving world there's going to be introducing some API changes. Again, these aren't mutually exclusive. I see a lot of our enterprises doing development on a feature branch and then deploying their production-grade services on our production branch. A picture is worth 1,000 words. I took a screenshot of the container that is 23.08, so what, a year? 6 months old, right? And CVEs, common vulnerabilities and exploits, are a point-in-time statement. So as the container ages, new vulnerabilities are discovered. And all I'm showing over here is even a container that is 6 months old, or even more than that at this point, right? We've got 0 critical and high vulnerabilities. And that's the piece of software that we have integrated inside of Azure AI Studio. So believe it or not, I'm wrapping up on the slides because we want to get into demos, right? That's why we want to get into demos. This is what the NVIDIA AI Enterprise suite offers, right? It gives you access to the NIMs across community models, custom models, some NVIDIA models across all sorts of different tasks. We ensure that we give you access to the different branches, the security advisories. And the best part about it is you have a direct client into NVIDIA, right, should you choose for that software as well. So you can call 1-800-NVIDIA. We've got SLAs around response times and target restore times. And we're doing some pretty interesting stuff across our respective support organizations to make that even more streamlined. So you have one line to call, and we can route calls accordingly. OK. Now for the fun part. I could go into slides, but we figured let us show you everything we're talking about rather than spend more time on slide. So everything is live. Hopefully nothing's going to go wrong.
This is where the bet sort of changes, where I had standing room only. I also had that it's going to break, so let's see if that one holds true. I might be 1 for 2.
I'm gonna blame it on your Wi-Fi if that is the case. OK. So what are we going to do? First thing we're going to do is we're going to experiment with NIMs, right? We're going to give you that dopamine to see what NIMs provides, right? Full stack acceleration. So we made it really hard for you guys to discover our NIMs. The URL is ai.nvidia.com, right? ai.nvidia.com, tough URL to memorize, but this is where you can experience all of our NIMs. I'm going to go straight into the actual app rather than stay on the marketing page. We've got different modalities. We've got different industries. And the whole point is you can engage with NIMs directly via UI. You don't even have to log in, right? Because I want to show you what full stack acceleration stands to bring. So this came out yesterday, right? This came out yesterday, so this is not canned. Here we go. I did this yesterday. What we're going to do is this is the 𝗲3 vision model. It does reasoning of images quite well. I'm going to pick the screenshot of, I got lucky, I got to sit in the front row during keynote, right? So let's ask 𝗲3 vision. I hope it knows who your CEO is.
This is not the query that he ran in dry run.
OK, that's pretty good. Satya is presenting the 𝗲3 model and even calls out that it's got 4.2 billion parameters, right? So again, all models are available. Llama 3 is there. Again, you can engage with any one of those models directly in the UI without logging in. But more importantly, right, we're giving you all the code snippets on the right-hand side for you to go and prototype with these in your applications directly. With any email address, we'll give you 1,000 inferences. With a business email address, we'll give you 5,000 inferences. The objective here is not for you guys to integrate these into your production applications. This is for you to just get a feel for what full stack acceleration actually brings. We want you to then take the NIM with you and deploy it on your favorite Azure service. And we're going to make it even easier where we're going to actually integrate some of these NIMs into your favorite Azure services. Like I said earlier, right? It's 3 lines of code when shifting from one from a managed API to a self-hosted NIM, right? You change the URL, you update the model name, and then you give your API key, and you can do that, right? And so you see it over here. You just generate an API key when you need it. Like I said, we've got all sorts of different modalities you can browse. We've got models that we get to partner with specific model creators, so the 𝗦𝗲𝗍s and the 𝗦𝗲𝗄s of the world, where they have copyrighted images, so you can generate images, right, that you know have been trained on socially responsible data. Different domains as well. This is the domain that NVIDIA invests a lot in terms of creating models, whether it's biology, medical imaging, or genomics. Again, just all sorts of different modalities, different use cases, different industries. What we want you to do is come, experiment with these models, right? Take that API, integrate it into your application, experiment with it, but ultimately walk away with a NIM, right? Apply for a NIM and walk away with it. So now, what we're going to do is we're going to show you the benefits of NIM on versus NIM off. So Vineeth's sitting in front over here. Manuel's sitting in front over here. Put up your hands. That way, I'm not the one getting yelled at if the demo doesn't go good, and you guys get all the claps if it goes great. So what we're going to show here is a NIM off configuration, right? So this is us taking a Mixtral 8 7B model, running it as an endpoint in Azure AI Studio, right? We took what Mistral AI recommended as the runtime for it. So it's VLLM. It's a fork off VLLM. That's what we're going to run with. On the right-hand side, I'm calling my API from the API catalog, right? I'm calling the API from the API catalog. And I'm from California. I panicked when it was raining yesterday. I didn't know what to do. So we're going to just ask a question. And you're going to see the comparison between the two. What can I do in Seattle? Seattle, if it is raining. I didn't have a chance to do any of these, right? We were working all day yesterday.
I did confirm that he owns a raincoat, though. So that's good to know.
Well, fine, nice. I hope you guys see the difference, right? In terms of NIM on versus NIM off. We capture at the bottom the difference between the inter-token latency, and it's 4.5 times faster with NIM on, right? So we can show you all sorts of benchmarks, et cetera, but when you actually see the results come out, that's when the benefits really shine. So now we're going to pivot to a self-hosted NIM. Again, this is something we stood up inside of Azure AI Studio. We're going to go to a new session. You have a question for me?
I mean, can you tell me how you're hosting these models right now? Have you explained that one already?
I don't think we can.
Okay.
How do you deploy models in Azure Studio? Let's see if it hallucinates.
AI Studio. Call it AI Studio. Let's see. Azure AI Studio.
And look at that, it even knows the old name. So it's relatively fast, right? But you'd have to wait for the stream to finish. And that is the difference between the two, right? Even within the Azure ecosystem, you see the performance gains that is, twofolds higher. So hopefully that gives you a feel. We're not done here. We're going to pivot to the Christian side. Hopefully that gives you a feel in terms of just what full stack acceleration stands to bring to the table, right? And we're showing here, so far, we're showing NIM on versus NIM off, where we're comparing versus, as I said, an open source fork of the LLM, and then NIM on inside directly from our API catalog, and then hosted as an endpoint. But I don't think that's how people are going to consume NIMs, right, in actual production. It makes up just one part of a larger pipeline.
It does.
So Christian,
yes.
show us how we're going to bring NIMs into your ecosystem.
Let's do it.
And help these organizations operationalize AI. So I get to
Perfect. You hit 2, and there we go. So there was a slide that Adel showed about sort of how generative AI is evolving over the years. And he took a sort of his x-axis was time, right? It went from 2022 to 23 to 24. And that journey, we're actually seeing mimic in sort of the real world deployments of generative AI applications from a process standpoint also. So when we had that explosion with ChatGPT in 2022, all of a sudden Adel's family knew they were finally not displeased with him not becoming a doctor. It was great. They loved him again. They understood. That is right on in that purple loop where it says ideating and exploring. And that's in a life cycle, in an LLM ops life cycle. That's where hypotheses come in. We start to test them. We go to a model catalog within Azure AI Studio. You're choosing a model off the shelf. You're finding and trying those prompts out initially. This is sort of like what is akin to if you were a data scientist, a sort of exploratory data analysis. The goal here is to exit with a selected model, advance that project into the building/augmenting layer, where you're doing things like building retrieval augmented generation patterns, you're handling exceptions, you're doing sort of LLM customization in the form of fine-tuning, full parameter or LoRa method. You're doing prompt engineering as well, and you're sort of evaluating those results on some hypotheses that your business would have. So if you're building, say, for example, an outdoor store e-commerce chatbot solution, which I think everybody's heard of Contoso Outdoors at this point. This is day 2. Say you were doing that, right? You would have maybe a list of top 50 questions that you would expect customers to come into that experience having. Once you're OK with that, and you're ready to start releasing that experience to the wild, you would deploy that to an endpoint within Azure AI Studio, and then that would go to the operationalizing loop here on the right side in green. That's where you're really going to start to get all of that great business value out of the work that was done by the teams in the previous 2 iterative loops. The green section is what Adel's been talking about this entire time, right? How does NVIDIA bring optimized inference and what do you call it? An opinionated inference?
An opinionated inference microservice for doing Gen AI inferencing as efficiently as possible.
Look how well marketing's trained him. Thank you, Charlie.
They have.
That's there. But in context of the actual LLM ops lifecycle and how we deploy generative AI application in the real world, you have to put that experience back into that chain. And so what we want to do then is show you how we can take the NIMs and actually bring them into Azure AI Studio. So what I've done here, for those that are not familiar, on the right side, you're going to see a directive acyclic graph, or a DAG. That is sort of the output of prompt flow. Prompt flow is a feature within Azure AI Studio. So you'll see down here, I am, of course, using prompt flow. And I am constructing this graph on the right. This is sort of the visualization, and I'm doing it in UI because I think it's pretty, and I think folks tend to understand the value a little bit better. This is also available in VS Code. I know this is a developer audience, so you can live in VSC. But here, we're going to start this graph with an input. And for this experience, that input is essentially going to be a customer question. What we're going to do with that is route that input to a couple places. We're going to route it here to a question embedding node. An embedding node is essentially calling an 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 model to say, take the user question and vectorize it for me. Give it to me in an embedding. The other place we're going to route that is actually to a customer lookup. This is going to go to a Cosmos DB instance and say, I have a user ID, GUID, I have like 1 through 10. But you would have a better GUID than that. Hopefully you have more than 10 customers. And that's going to go back to that Cosmos DB and look up who the customer is, what their recent purchases are, what their membership status is with our outdoor store, all that kind of good stuff as well. We will pass the question embedding then to the retrieve documentation step that will go to Azure AI Search and pull back all of the information that we have within our product catalog. I think you all saw Seth do a demo where he held up a shoe and the recommender said, oh, you actually want a full covered boot because he was going to get cold or something like that, right? This is less cool than that. Seth's demos are way cooler than mine. But this is essentially creating
Don't sell yourself short. Don't sell yourself short, yeah.
Is better. I know where to find my place. So this whole step, right, we're creating that retrieval augmented generation pattern. And then what we're going to do here is actually pass the RAG output, pass the customer lookup to a customer prompt step. This is where we're going to create that augmented prompt. So when a user comes in and says, I'm going hiking, I'm going to go in, the Canadian Rockies, for example. What kinds of shoes would you recommend? It's going to be able to have all the information about who you are as a customer, what you've purchased recently, what the catalog of items that we have in stock are. And it's going to take all of that information, and it's going to pass that information to an LLM step. Now we have 2 Python steps here. This is a NIM on and a NIM off step. This is not best practice, so don't copy paste this because I'm having it terminate in 2 places. This is all for a demo to show, but essentially, if I was doing this correctly, what I would do is I would take the NIM on and I would route that only to the outputs, and I would just throw that away because who needs a NIM off container, right? So in that NIM on, you can see all I'm doing here is I am essentially calling that Mixtral 8x7 model that the team from NVIDIA, that Adel and his team have set up on managed online endpoints. And so what I can do in prompt flow is I can start running this end to end. I can actually pull up the chat functionality here to begin to sort of do a little bit of small scale unit test, just me. So I can say, I'm going on a camping trip to the Canadian Rockies in September. It will be me, my wife, and our 2 dogs. What do you have for me in terms of tents?
Did you pick Canadian Rockies because I'm Canadian?
I did pick Canadian Rockies because you're Canadian.
Good call.
I want to make you feel at home.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
The rain really scared him yesterday. He's from Northern California. They don't get rain. So as we wait here, you're going to see this chat experience begin to sort of populate. If I were to scroll up on the left side, you would actually see each individual node begin to start firing. So this one right here, you can see right there as complete. And now it's actually returning a lot of information here. So it's saying my name, Jane. Clearly my name's not Jane. My name's Christian. Hi. But it thinks I'm Jane because I passed it a customer lookup ID of 2. Right? It's saying, thanks for shopping at Contoso Outdoors. Again, Contoso Outdoors, if you haven't bought stock yet, it's only day 2. We're using it in every demo. Definitely buy some stock.
It's blowing up.
It's totally blowing up. So this is a really cool demo of how you can do end-to-end in building on large language models using NIMs. But remember, I had 2 versions. So if I close this out, I have 2 versions, a NIM on and a NIM off. So if I go back to that chat, I can actually pull up the trace here to try to understand a little bit better about what's going on within this entire directive acyclic graph. If I pull up that trace, now you can see each Now you can see, there you go. Each individual step, as it goes through that entire flow, how long each step is taking. And if you notice, this is sort of where the majority of the time gets taken up. And so if I'm building a chat experience for my users, I probably want to go at the Pareto rule and go at the 80%, right? This is the 20% of the steps that's taking 80% of the time. So how might, Adel, how might I actually improve that? If you look here, we have 5.2 seconds when the NIM's off for a Mixtral 8x7, and 2.1. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but that's better than a 2x perf gain by having a NIM on.
I think so. I think so, right? And we just wanted to show this in the context of a real-life application as opposed to making a call on a single microservice. But Christian, I didn't feel that performance gain in your demo.
I mean, these numbers are great,
Jane, right? I didn't feel that performance gain.
Jane, thank you. That's my formal name.
If I may.
You may.
If I may, Jane. If I may, Jane. Again, here, just going back to our UI, what we're going to do is actually call the prompt flow endpoints that we deployed. And again, showing on versus off, just so you guys can feel this in a real-life experience. So
that entire flow that I just showed you, you click deploy, and it will create a managed endpoint with the entire flow that I just showed you. And this is what Adel's going to show you in real life.
Brought to you by Contoso.
Brought to you by Contoso. Buy stock now.
Going camping tomorrow in Seattle. What should I bring? Let's see if it calls me Jane as well. Yes, got my name right. All right, so I am in the customer database for Contoso, and it recommended that I bring a tent and a backpack. Ooh, on the other side, it gave us a little more. So the backpack, what else? Oh, an adventure dining table. Look at that. I'll definitely take that for the family.
Fancy.
Right, and again, you get to see, just in a real-life example, just feeling those streams come out, I think really demonstrates the full-stack acceleration benefits. And again, here, seeing performance gains of NIM on versus NIM off, where the model is grounded with our data, right? It's a RAG plus DAG deployment. And right, we just applied NIM to the heaviest part, the most latent part of the workflow, right? If you're doing RAGs, there are other microservices you might call. Earlier, I didn't get a chance to demonstrate, embedding certain microservices that we have, retrieval microservices that we have, re-ranking microservices that we have. So again, you can apply this concept of NIM on versus NIM off across your entire workflow, right? We start naturally with the parts that are most taxing, right, on your latency, and then work from there. So I think I'm going to pivot back to our slides.
Yep.
So hopefully we've got a chance to show you just frankly how easy it is to deploy NIMs. This was the workflow that we went through, right? If there's one takeaway when you guys walk away from here is, remember the URL ai.nvidia.com. Share it with your colleagues, with your friends, with your kids. We love playing with the image generation models that are there. Experiment with them directly in the UI. Sign up for an account, invoke your APIs. We'll give you 5,000 for free. But then you'll see on the top, right? You'll always have an apply for DA or apply for NIMs. NIMs are part of NVIDIA Enterprise. NVIDIA Enterprise is licensed per GPU, but we give 90-day free subscriptions, with business emails. So Contoso, you sign up with Contoso, we'll approve that, right? We'll get that approved. And we just want you guys to get an experience of what NIM on versus NIM off is. I know we talked a lot about Azure AI Studio, right? And again, naturally, right, it's where a lot of the tooling that Christian was talking about, the traceability, the observability. Man, you guys announced so many different capabilities yesterday. I got to see Mark Russinovich, I can never say his name right, like his on safety. I mean, it was awesome, right? It was awesome. So lots of tooling there, great capabilities, but we've also enabled, right, NIMs and NVIDIA Enterprise as a whole across infrastructure as a service. So you've got VMIs, managed Kubernetes services as well, like AKS, and obviously inside of Azure AI Studio. And I think that brings us to our call to action, and then our next, and questions. So engage with us, get scanned. We have a booth all the way up on the 5th floor. Like I said, get familiar with NIMs on ai.nvidia.com. And if you don't have access to a GPU, right, we have a program called Launchpad where we can rent out a system for a day or two for you guys to explore with it, right? But finally, right, head over to Azure, look for NVIDIA Enterprise on the marketplace, and request a free trial through this URL. We'll give you access to the self-hosted NIMs as soon as they GA, which I can't say more about that. Where is Dimitri? Is he here? Yes, he is. Right? I promised him last night at midnight that I would add this call out. So today we are doing a developer showcase at the Hyatt Olive 8 at 4 p.m. You scan this barcode or QR code, and then you get all the details. Are you giving drinks out at this thing? Or? Oh, yeah, of course he is. Of course he is. And I think we left 10 minutes for Q&A.
Yeah, we did. Perfect timing.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, folks. Charlie, are you running the mic over there for questions if there are?
Yeah, so if there's any questions, please feel free to stand up and just kind of project. We don't have a wireless mic. Some of the, kind of the through the chat, kind of
Wait, Charlie, somebody,
Yeah,
go ahead. Go. I thought I saw somebody.
Yep, you did.
So you showed the models are hosted on your cloud, NVIDIA cloud, or your cloud?
Yeah, what I showed on the API catalog is our models running on our cloud, right? But our cloud is actually co-located in different places. So we got DGX Cloud and Azure, et cetera. But we abstract all that, right? But the objective there, I always say this, it's a flywheel for people to experience NIMs. It is not for production deployments. We're not in the business of renting out the APIs. So yes, it is on cloud infrastructure that we rent back or buy back through our partners. And it's just a flywheel to do that. Having said that, we started this work about a year ago. We bring our models and our optimized models into the Azure AI Studio model catalog. So we started with the 𝗦𝗲𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗶cie 𝗜𝗍𝗀 models that we announced at Ignite.
Ignite, yep.
Right, at Ignite. And so you will find NVIDIA optimized models, soon to be NIMified, right inside the model catalog that you can just deploy via the Azure AI Studio and the managed endpoints.
So the managed endpoint is pointing to the services hosted, Nims services. Is that true?
So you're taking the NIMified community model, and you're hosting that model in this instance, you're hosting it on a managed endpoint within Azure AI Studio. So the hardware itself is running in Azure Cloud when you're hosting it for inference. And I was just showing how you use that within the entire tooling chain of AI Studio.
At the end of the day, it's a Docker container.
Yeah.
You can take it with you anywhere you want. Right? Granted, it's secure, it's safe, and all that. And that's what makes it easy for us to integrate with these guys.
Thank you.
Great question.
Yep, thank you.
Charlie, go for it.
Yeah, here's one. How would performance enhancement help in optimizing agentic LLMs?
Yeah, how does performance optimization help in agentic LLMs? So you got to think of agentic LLMs as so microservices are probably the lowest common denominator as a unit, right? And when you get into agentic LLMs, you have multiple agents, right, taking action. Not just reasoning, but actually taking action. So you can imagine in agentic LLMs where, frankly, you're making multiple calls to LLMs, multiple calls to embeddings, multiple calls to retrievals, multiple calls, right, and then executing on those actions. That compounded latency that Christian was showing through the awesome traceability, right, like it will grow. It will grow. So when you utilize full stack acceleration, right, to drive the highest throughput and performance for any given one of those microservices, you're just going to make your end-to-end workflow, frankly, execute faster, right? And so we see a lot of that, right? So it's that compounded, latency that you get as a result of all these microservices that leads to this.
Okay. There's a lot of thumbs ups and applause for the demos. So great job on the demos.
Woohoo.
I think folks want to know, can they do what you guys showed? Is all that available?
Yeah, there is a repo for that.
I think I think it's on GitHub or something, right?
Is it what? Sorry.
is on GitHub or something?
Yeah,
Or
it's a
examples?
part of the GitHub repo that we have within Azure, and I'm pulling up.
You mean it's not on Contoso's company website?
It is not. It's
Jane?
it's
Jane? Is it not on?
aka.ms/AI tour/contoso-chat. Now, that accelerator is going to have an Azure OpenAI engine in it by default. But because it's a DAG, we're building a graph, you can take that node, and instead of having it be an Azure OpenAI service endpoint, you could change it, which is what we did, to a community model, a Mixtral 8x7 that we used with and without NIM.
And actually, can you make an API call directly into prompt flow from the API catalog?
Can you make say it one more time?
Can you invoke the API? Yeah, you can. The team's looking at me. We can invoke the API directly from the API catalog for the NIM as well.
Yeah, we should be able to.
Yeah. And that's literally 3 lines of code. All you guys will have to do is change your API key, right, the URL path, and the model itself. That's exactly what we did with prompt.
Python step within prompt flow. Nice and easy.
And in parallel, if you apply for access to the NIMs, then you can self-host them in your own VPC, right? And the whole point is experiment with the API and then self-host, right? Self-host.
And those models that we were showing as NIM on and NIM off were being hosted on managed online endpoints on an A100. So that's pretty much the easy architecture right there.
If I need to fine-tune, what do you recommend? Fine-tune on Azure machine learning or in Nims, right?
So in this context, Nims is very specific to inferencing of the LLMs, right? We have other microservices that are actually already part of it. Did we bring Nemo as a framework into Azure AI Studio? So we have libraries for fine-tuning in Azure AI Studio, right? I would suggest you do it.
Yeah, because I would definitely need computing better computing when I fine-tune it.
Yeah.
I can actually answer that from the AI Studio perspective. In the model catalog, we actually have fine-tune wizards. If you're OK with an SFT LoRa method, we have a fine-tune wizard that you can go through. You give it a JSON-L, and then we'll do that fine-tuning in a serverless fashion for you. So if you don't need to do a full parameter, if you just want to start experimenting with a SFT method, then you can do that. That's the good question.
No, Nims support LoRa adapters at inference time, right? So any model that you fine-tune will be able to run if it's like LoRa or PEFT or any one of those types of.
But while fine-tuning, can I use Nims?
We have other microservices for that are still in early access. We do have an SDK, right? So you got to think of, we didn't get into this. So NVIDIA for the longest time was providing SDKs. We continue to provide SDKs, right? Given now just the interest that we see in the enterprise and the fact that they don't have the hundreds of ML engineers that the cloud service providers might have, we've decided to take an approach where in addition to the SDKs, we provide microservices that are more granular and very specific to each step. We start with inferencing because that's what we see a lot of the demand. We've got microservices for evaluation. We've got microservices for curation, data curator. They're all under the Nemo brand. We've got one called Customizer that's also on early access. So we're basically taking our SDK, writing these very atomic microservices very specific to tasks. And so it takes less onus on the user to try to figure out what it is they're trying to do. And then we're taking these microservices and integrating them into Azure. So Nims is where we're furthest along. We're in direct access, which means it's GA software, but we're limiting how many folks we're giving access to. We will go to GA very soon. And then the rest of the microservices will come on the platform. That does not preclude you from using the SDK to do it in the meantime. The SDK is available. It's through NVIDIA Enterprise. It's also available in the open source. The SDK is there. It's just as it relates to very specific microservices, those will be coming on board shortly. We do have an awesome demo. Is that what you're going to call out? At the booth?
I was going to say that in the registries, on the NVIDIA AI,
That's right.
we have a component for fine-tuning.
As well. Yeah, so we actually brought the SDKs and put them there and turned the SDKs into components, right? So they can execute on them.
The NVIDIA AI registry,
Yeah.
it's one of the features, the Azure AI Studio.
Hopefully that answers the question.
Time for one more, I think.
Yeah, one more. Can you elaborate more on the application of Nims in drug discovery / genomics?
I'm not that smart.
It's a softball, man.
I'm not that smart. I could show you via the UI, But honestly, I remember even, so we do medical imaging. You guys wanted genomics, right? A deep variant is a big, no, that's not it.
To expand on that, like a lot of the use cases we've seen are chatbots, like the first 2 days, right? So when you think of like, applying this to, if I'm building a prototype, like how am I thinking this? Chatbot examples seem very kind of siloed. So I'm just, curious what the expanded use cases, how, you can utilize some of what you showed.
Yeah.
Or even like to get started, right?
Awesome. Does it have to be medical imaging, or it can be something?
It doesn't, but something in the realm that's not a chatbot or an agent.
Piece. I like that. Okay, so this is I like that. This is the protein fold of something. But let me show you something that I know a bit better. So, for example, we've got speech, Nims for speech, pretty accurate. Like you can record with a mic, so you can basically inject ASR into your application, and then couple that with a TTS that sounds exactly like you. Let me show you. Like I said, we've got visual design. So I was talking about these earlier, right? The demo I did at GTC was basically ask folks to, actually, no, let's go to Edify. So this is image generation. An actor staring into the mountains. I don't know. I'm really bad at these random prompts. Right, so this is now generating imagery from, what's the word? Responsibly sourced corporate data. We partner with Edify and Shutterstock to create these. So you get like these stock images from the get-go that you can utilize. Other fun applications that my kids play with is audio to face. And again, this is about, let me see who's going to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You guys can't hear that right now. Sorry, it's coming out of my machine. So essentially, yeah, you can imagine what we're doing. You can creation of digital humans and avatars as part of kiosks that a lot of our retailers are building and engaging with, right? So you can create human-like avatars that sound and look just like you. So I mean, there's a lot and more coming. LLMs is definitely one that, the chatbot that this, have conversations with your knowledge base, with your enterprise data is the most common one that we hear. So that's why you see a lot of the focus there. But go nuts, explore. We've got docs on every one of these, and yeah, give us feedback.
We're out of time, but there's, I think, just a yes or no question. Would this run on Azure Stack HCI?
Hyperconverged infrastructure.
Azure Stack Edge.
It's
if
anything Kubernetes,
HCI's,
right?
yeah, anywhere you got Kubernetes, it'll run. I think HCI, right? I think HCI is made up of Dell OEM systems, like.
Yeah. It's like just a container.
100%. 100%.
There is also another presentation on Vista 3D that it was pre-recorded, so that they could find an example on.
All right, and more examples on Vista 3D, which is
for health.
for healthcare
It's a segmentation of CT scans.
in medical imaging. Awesome.
Actually running on Azure ML, so there is another pre-recorded session.
Yep. Awesome. We have a solution session. Please look that up. It's available on demand online right now in the catalog, so check that out. Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you guys. I think
Thank
we
you,
made it
folks.
just on time. Appreciate you guys.
Have a good build.
Enjoy the rest of build.